Good evening and welcome to the January 17th special budget meeting. Members of the public have been provided with the following methods to watch and or participate in this open meeting. Number one is attend in person at the township office. Secondly, watch the live stream by accessing the meeting on the township's YouTube page. Third, attend electronically to observe the meeting or to speak to an item on the agenda by registering with the clerk's division in advance. And finally, submit written comments to the clerk's division that have been provided to the mayor and council and will form part of the public record. I'd now like to call the meeting to order. Can I have approval of the agenda, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Roman, that the council adopt the January 17th special budget meeting council agenda as presented with the following addendums. One, add item 6.3 report number PW 412-2023 special budget meeting council agenda as presented. Piper Street sidewalk extension 2023 budget capital budget Piper Street neighborhood meeting. Item number 2, add item 6.4 memorandum from Andrew McNeely, Chief Administrative Officer, regarding the 2023 budget discussion paper service level adjustment provision of a porta potty at neighborhood level parks, seasonal basis. And number 3, add item 6.3 correspondence received from Robert Newfield regarding Piper Street pedestrian crossing and stop sign.
Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. I would now like to do the Indigenous territory acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Inuit people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people of Canada. And now I'd like us to pause and reflect on what has happened, how we're attempting to move forward, and with the hope that in the future we will be a stronger Canada together. Thank you. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof? Seeing none. Items for consideration. Report number Finance 01 2023 draft budget. And I believe in the presentation now, Christina Brooks. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to share my screen so that I can put the presentation up. The intention of this evening is to go over at a high level some highlights from the operating budget and then pause for council's discussion. As I make my way through the presentation, please feel free to pause me if you have any questions on the topics, or again, at the end, we can discuss questions as well.
Let's just go.
We have 3 scheduled budget meetings this month. Tonight's meeting on Thursday and then on the 26th as well. I've just put a summary of schedule of how it is potential that we could go through the materials. Tonight's focus is on the operating budget. If we conclude all of that, then the next meeting will focus on the 2023 proposed capital budget. And the final meeting will be on the 10-year proposed capital budget. Of course, timing is flexible depending on how many questions, perhaps the operating carries on, or there may be questions or follow-up that have to come back at a separate meeting. For today, we will just do a high-level overview of some of the drivers and factors that went into the budget preparations. We'll talk about the impacts to the tax rates. I will show you some graphical representations of where our funding and expenses are going, and then we will break down by department. The 2023 draft proposed budget has a 4.9% proposed tax increase. That's slightly higher than the information provided in December, and I will go into the slight changes in a moment. 2.96% of that is for overhead wages, inflationary factors, and our increases in our transfers to reserves for capital. And then 1.94 is really attributed to the additional staff and overhead that relates to that position in order to be able to adapt to Bill 23 More Homes Built Faster Act. At the bottom of the screen there, you can see in very small, look bigger on my computer screen. It shows you the estimated 2023 composition for the tax bill. This is based on our proposed increases and what the regional proposed increase is. Of course, the region has not finalized their budget, so that is very much subject to change. But we are looking to be about 20 cents on the dollar raised in taxes on the overall bill. The other graph just shows you the weighted assessment for our tax in terms of residential and multi-residential being 68% of our assessment, and then commercial at 15% being the next largest. The proposed impact on the average household, we have been using 372,300 because that is what the rate was at the last time the assessment was, and so to comparables, that is what it is. So the average impact for the general rate increase is $46.98 for the average household. When you factor in the air special rate, which is only applied on urban air, they would be looking at a $55.43 increase. Some of the key influencers this year, it's been a very challenging year from a budget. We are finally getting to see some of the growth impact our assessment. Our assessment actually increased by 3.27%, which is great. There is a lot more growth in the community, but there is always a timing lag behind when the assessment actually gets applied. So that is positive for the township. The Statistics Canada released the December year-over-year inflation rate for Canada, and it was sitting at 6.3%. And we had a peak inflation in August at 8.1%. So our costs are very much fluctuating upwards at a rate we have not seen in my working lifetime. So it is making it challenging to provide a low impact for our ratepayers with still providing the value and the services they are looking for. Some of the costs have increased more than the inflation. If you look at the average cost of diesel fuel from the beginning of 2022 to the end, it increased 45%. It's uncertain if that is the new normal, or if due to supply chain and other issues, it will return to something we are more used to seeing. We are heavily reliant on diesel for our equipment in this township, so that is a big driver of some of our costs. We are continuing to experience difficulties with obtaining items on time, or if the prices are not increasing dramatically because they only have one left and they know that they can sell it for whatever your highest bidder, essentially. And it's also driving into some labor issues and shortages, which is also increasing prices. Our insurance continues to see year-over-year growth. We are expecting a further 15% increase this summer when the insurance policy does renew. It's a very tight market for people willing to provide insurance in the municipal world, so that is driving the costs up. When you look at your hydro, your gas, your water, your sewer, these are again increasing at sometimes phenomenal rates. Natural gas this past summer indicated a 20% increase, which people are only now starting to notice in their heating bills, but it's definitely impacting the township as well as hydro and our costs go up. And then the other unfortunate news we received was that the 2023 Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant that we received every year has been reduced by $49,000 compared to what we received in 2022. And that there is a number of factors that the government has for the formula to calculate. And for this year, we are our calculation was actually lower, but there is a provision that they will not reduce it more than 15%. So we will see those further reductions in the future. I did want to highlight some where we're at with tax rates around the region and within different municipalities as comparables. You can see that on the list that we reviewed, North Dumfries is one of the lower ones. So I do caution people when we start talking percentage increases. If something cost me $5 and now it costs me 10, that is 100% increase, but that's not really as significant a magnitude. And if you were at $100 and it goes up by 5, you've only increased 5%. So it's just that's why I want to bring it back to the actual tax dollars and impact on our ratepayers. I did look at the surrounding regional municipalities for the lower tier rates only, and what their budgets have indicated the impact on their average household ratepayers are. You can see that it ranges at $46.98 all the way up to $180. It's my understanding that the Wellesley budget has actually passed, and everything else is in discussion and is completely subject to change. But this again gives you a perspective of what is happening within our region. This screen is a graphical representation of the sources of our revenues for the year. You can see that our main source of revenue for operations is from taxation. It is coming in at about 61%. We do take in quite a bit with fees and charges. I do have the fact that we have money coming in from reserves as well, but that's more of a financing situation because we would have already raised those funds in taxation or grants in a previous year. But it gets you a sense of where we are spending our funds from. In terms of departmental expenses, again, this can just show you where the money is going out to. And it's just an impact of the size of each of those departments and the nature of the work undertaken. Finally, this graph shows you we are proposing to put us into reserves $2.4 million in the 2023 budget. And this shows you that 39% of that is coming out of our tax dollars. 15% is coming from the funds we receive from Grand Bridge Energy in terms of investment income. We transfer that directly in. 31% of those transfers is coming from the aggregate fees that we receive each year. 14% is the Canada Community Building Fund, or gas tax if you prefer. And then a small amount is coming from our self-sustaining building department. I indicated that our budget rate was 4.9% instead of the 4.8% that was presented in December. Two items changed in the operating budget between times. We increased the aggregate revenue projected to be received in 2023, as well as the offsetting transfer to reserve, just based on the amount of aggregate that is being withdrawn out of the township. We feel that $750,000 is an appropriate number. And I also received notice in January that the audit services cost was increasing, so that we're requesting to increase that line by $4,500. At this point, if you want to turn to your budget books, I just thought we could go through the departments and I would provide some highlights, and then we can pause for if there's any further questions. In terms of the council and elections budget, obviously we don't have an election this year. That's just some maintenance costs for for maintaining the voters list and some transfers to reserves. In terms of council itself, I wanted to highlight two items. Currently, our policy is for conferences and training courses that the mayor may attend 2 conferences to a maximum of $4,000, and councilors are able to attend 1 conference to a maximum of $2,000. At this time, we have a budget of $10,000 set aside based on the fall indications of who wanted to attend which conference. This is something that staff have discussed, whether council would like to attend both Roma and AMO, or if there was a desire to change that policy. So I highlight that for your attention. And then the other one, which is one that we do require direction from council, is in January 2023, we received the official request from TAPMO in terms of membership, and they have requested another $5,000. That is the same as what it was in 2022. The year before that, it was $250 for a 2-year membership. Currently, my budget, only the draft that I have presented, only shows $1,500. So if council would like to increase that, then we would need direction. And Madam Mayor, through you to the rest of the councilors, I can pause if there's any other questions on the council or election budget.
So, what about the conferences? I start, you want to attend both, don't you?
There's a misunderstanding on my behalf that I thought both were available to us, and I was only working for that. I am open to both, but I definitely not a team from that point of view.
And Councilor Roman, you're going to be Roma, not Roma. So that would possibly be, if the council doesn't use both, can another councilor attend? There's do you know what I mean? That's first councilors. What do you think? What do you think? I've always thought councils should be allowed to attend both. In most municipalities, they do.
From a starting standpoint, first year as a counselor, I'm trying to absorb as much as I can, as fast as I can, so I can be productive and as useful as I can be. I can't say it's going to stay like this forever, depending on what I absorb and what I do. But for myself, I see it as a benefit at this point to try and absorb that. Though I have not attended either of them before, so I don't know what's comfortable. So that's my small naive interpretation.
Councilor,
Mayor, I never attended any conferences previously. Last year was the first one I went to AMO. I didn't think it had much value, but actually when I went, it was surprising how valuable it was. So I kind of regret not going previous years. So I think Mayor's right. We should really persuade people to go to at least one, because I was really surprised how much I learned at different delegations and whatnot. So we should all make a point of trying to go to one. And I think most of that, I don't know going up there each one, but I had the option to go both. I probably would.
Peter?
So I won't be able to go to either. I don't have an application date. But so that could mean that I forget police one o'clock.
Councilor Austin?
I have no objection with either, but my opinion was if I'm kind of like a leader right now where time is like my work week is short and it's hard for me to take more time off. However, I would think if you went to AMO 1 year and Roma the next year and AMO that alternated them, I think that would be fine. However, in certain circumstances, like if I don't go to AMO or Roma and the money's there and one of the other counselors want to use that to go to another conference, I have no problem with that. I think we should stick within our budget, but even the $10,000 doesn't really make sense because if we all max out, we have $12,000, correct? So the $10,000 budget will be blown anyway, if we all go to everything. So I have no problem with it, but like I'm saying, I think we should stick to the budget that we've already budgeted. It's highly unlikely all four of us are gonna want to go the same year. And I'd be more than willing if one of the other counselors wanted to use my allotment to go to another conference, by all means, take it.
So if I hear correctly, the actual existing policy is sufficient, but if it's not used by a specific counselor, another counselor can step in and take over. Is that correct, what I'm hearing from council? Do we need to change the policy at all, Christina?
We'll update it for clarity.
Thank you, thank you.
Can I just also clarify, the budget was set at 10,000 based on, a unofficial poll of who was interested in attending conferences. And since I did not have a positive response from everyone, we felt that 10,000 was going to be sufficient for those who were interested in attending. Because yes, it should be 12,000 if it really was 2,000 per counselor and 4,000 for the mayor, but that was what it was in the fall.
How much did we spend last year? Do you know offhand?
Madam Mayor, to year end 2022, the spend was $6,213. And in 2021, it was $3,859. However, we have to remember for both 21 and 22, they were virtual conferences. So the actual spend to participate in those conferences was lower because you didn't have the accommodation or the mileage component attributed to attending, let's say, AMO in Ottawa. So the earlier years are not representative of I'll call it a traditional conference setting. We are now witnessing conferences back in an in-person mode. And certainly Roma, which is next week, and AMO, which is targeted for the third week of August, they're both in-person conferences.
Thank you. So staff will revise that wording of the policy, but the policy still basically stands at $10,000. Okay, go ahead, Councilor.
Just one more comment though. Not that it would ever happen, but if you're gonna put it in there that counselors can go to one each year and the mayor can go to two, what do we do if we all decide we're gonna go? And we've got to change our budget. Like, I mean, it just seems kind of redundant putting it at $10,000 and then right after that you follow it up with a total that comes to $12,000. Like, so I follow it up with the rules that don't equate to the budget.
So are you suggesting the budget be raised to $12,000?
Either that or eliminate like just have a educational budget of $10,000.
Thoughts, councilors? You know, we have it's also Ontario Small Municipal Conference, which I believe was supposed to be in Brent this year, was it not? Is it in Brent? In the spring, it's usually in May. It isn't its week. Ministers don't come out to it. Councillor Austin.
And it hasn't been an issue up to now. It just, I don't see why that is designed that way. I understand it's never used, but just in case it's used, you know, we're raising up another issue in another meeting saying, oh, no, we got $22,000 because everyone wants to go to these, you know, meetings. So it's just maybe something to think of for the future, that if we're gonna put a limit of $12,000, we shouldn't have a budget of $10,000. We should have a budget of $12,000.
Okay, thank you. And go ahead, Christina.
Just to clarify, the policy actually indicates that that is the maximum, and counselors are to let the treasurer know by November what their plans are for the following, so that the budget can be crafted based on that. So based on my discussion with various counselor members, I did not feel that everyone was attending for 2023, which is why I only proposed the 10,000 instead of the 12.
And maybe in November of this year, we can look at it again and see, because as Councilor Roman says, once you go to it, it's really, if you're really interested, it's really quite good. And I think the more you want to go to that, we'll evaluate in November again, and we'll just reword the policy at 10,000 for this year. The next item is the TAPMO one. Oh, Councilor Austin.
One more question. When do all these meeting schedules come out? Like, do they all come out at the same time? Like for AMO, TAPMO, Roma, you know, all these things, do they all come out at the same time?
So you know a good time in advance. So you know a year in advance when the AMO conference is done this August. The new date will be posted already for the following year. So you know probably a good year in advance.
Okay, so it's not, so we can let the treasurer know by November, because those dates are all there for that. Okay.
Any further questions? Okay, let's move on to TAPMO. Right now, our treasurer said we have given $5,000 last year. $250. What is this? Councilor Tilly.
In reading the suggestions on what is provided based on that, I would like just to dive a little bit deeper into that. Like, is the answer, if it doesn't seem like a good idea, then to invest something that much more money into, then maybe it's not important. But I'd like to hear both sides. There's both sides from those that already know about it.
I chaired that 6 years. And I thought I almost 4,000 ministers for that. And policies we wanted. I worked with voluntary and actually we put together a policy statement of 6 acts we wanted province, and they agreed with us on the acts. More enforcement requirements, and so we still have those 6 acts. And I stepped down from chair, and a new chair took over, and then that's when they asked for the $5,000 increase, and it was to lobby ministers and MPs, and we did that under when I was on it, and got a lot of support because we gave them the knowledge. For instance, they're paying 25 cents on the dollar of taxes because they classify as farmland, and we pointed out the discrepancy with that, and you have to understand that if you give somebody a tax break, somebody else has to pay the others, because the bid's just the budget and there's X number of dollars. So if they're only paying 25 cents on the dollar, the residents have to pay the other 75 cents of their taxes, which we brought forward to the actually the minister, Bethan Foley, and he was shocked by that when he heard that. And it's going through the court system right now. But so those are things we did, and then all of a sudden, the new board, and I am on the executive, has done websites, great. They've done logos, they posting minutes. Now they want to hire an executive. But since I haven't been on, there's been one minister meeting. And that was a 15-minute one. It's not a, when I went to the ministers, I went down to Toronto and we took a half day. Talking. So I hate saying this, they really haven't done anything. And now they want to hire a full-time executive at $175 a year. Starting in 2024, $75 this year, 75,000 this year, and 150,000 for 2024. I don't see the justification of it. I wish they were doing more and really working. OSSGA, every time they try to talk to the new head, they butt heads and they get bashed. And so it's broken down right now. Will I stay on the executive? If we don't pay our dues, I guess I don't stay on the executive. But AMO has an advocate committee that does a lot of lobbying and stuff. And I'm looking at joining the AMO advocate committee. And they actually talk to the ministers and everything as well. So I can be hopeful for TAPMO, but right now I'm unsure. Do we pay them $5,000? I talked at the executive meeting saying we can't justify it in this climate, in this taxation year and everything that people are being hit with. I wouldn't mind giving them $1,500 just to keep our foot in the door. But that's just a placeholder, just so if it crashes and burns, maybe I cannot step in. My staff have ordered me not to step in because it's way too much work. But I don't know, guys, what do you think? Councilor.
Madam Mayor, I tend to agree with what you're saying, and I've watched the last few years, really hasn't not much been accomplished. You know, I see you butting your head against the ministers and we're not making any headway. So I kind of like the suggestion of just saying, let's just forget TAPMO and let's just focus on AMO and not spend the money.
Any other comments? Councilor.
I agree. I'm reading the staff report. There doesn't seem to be a lot of justification as to why they want $5,000. No business plan percent, but there's no reasoning behind it. Even though we question it, we still didn't get a reasoning behind it. I'm all for stepping away from TAPMO, watching them from a distance, and if they do good things, maybe next year we can justify it, but I can't justify, you know, we just listen to our treasurer talk about percentages and dollar amounts, stuff like that. 1,500 to 5,000 is a huge increase. So,
$250 to $5,000.
well, I thought we paid 1,500 last
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councilor Osler, last year we did pay the $5,000 request. It was the 2020-21 year where it was $250 for the 2-year membership.
and now it's 5,000 for one. Yeah, I think we should sit back and watch from a distance and, you know, I'm not happy with giving a $1,500 to keep foot in the door. I think they need to prove themselves that they're worthy of $5,000.
Any other comments? Councilor.
The aggregate committee that you're talking about with AMO, is that just part of our membership dues that we already pay to AMO, or is there additional costs that will be associated with joining that?
There is no cost to joining the committees at AMO. There was a lot of committees and all they do is lobby and the MPPs and the ministers. So they work they work great at Queen's Park, a lot of the committees. It's constantly quite good. And they offer to assist TAPMO with a lot of things, but TAPMO has never responded back to. What do we require?
So, Madam Mayor, staff will need a resolution, because right now the draft budget shows a line item of 1,500. So if council wishes, the report identified 2 potential options. One is 0 or one is 5,000. To vary from what's in the published draft, council will have to adopt a resolution with the recommended spend allowance for the 2023 capital membership.
Ms. Sage, do you have the, amended? So, are we prepared to go through the whole, I don't think we're prepared to go through the whole motion, this one will just have this. That was, we just discussed at this point, right? So, Christina, did you have anything to put further?
I, through Madam Mayor to the rest of council, if there's any other questions on the council or election budget at this point.
Please carry on.
For convenience, I'm not going to share my screen for the next slide of my PowerPoint. It's just an item to highlight. I can if you would prefer, but I'll try it this way just to keep the meeting moving forward. When we turn to the corporate services budget, the item I wanted to highlight was the community grants program. Every year, council sets aside a certain amount in the budget for community grants. The application process opens up in the fall. We receive the grant applications by December 31st. We have a working group which comprises 2 members of council and myself that goes through the information provided and makes a recommendation to council, which we then bring to council on the committee of the whole meeting in March after the budget is approved with the set amount and recommend the actual allocation of the grant. This year's 2023 budget shows $42,500. That is the same amount as the 2022 budget. At an estimate of the grant applications received to date, we have been requested for $73,000. Some of that I say is an estimate because people have just said they want fees waived and we're seeking clarification on exactly what fees they are looking to be waived. So I will have that number finalized for the working group. But I wanted to bring to your attention that once again, the groups are asking for more than what the budget line is. And typically we do recommend the full spend at the March meeting, which then results when groups come out further on in the summer or the fall that we have completely spent the funds for that year. So I just wanted to highlight that out of corporate services as the biggest item.
Before you carry on, we met a grant committee that looked over the applications and with the new council, to be needed a grant committee, and when will that be formed? See how we're doing?
So Madam Mayor, an inaugural council, we struck the committee,
Oh, correct.
and that committee is now in place. It's Councillor Tilly and Councillor Rollerman, along with the treasurer, and they'll be meeting in the month of February, and there'll be a report to council with recommendations from the committee, from the group, in March. And council at that point in time will deliberate on how to award grants to the various participants.
Thank you for that reminder. Any other questions or comments? Carry on, Ms. Butts.
That was my highlight for the corporate services budget. And I just, again, through you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council, if there are any questions on any of the line items or any concerns over the corporate services budget.
All good. Please, carry on, please.
We'll turn next to our fire department. Again, just at a high level, we successfully installed fiber internet in the fall to the fire hall. So that is one of the cost centers that has increased. Previously, we were using a Wi-Fi signal through the region. So it is a significant cost increase, but a much stronger service for the fire hall. The other aspects that continue to challenge the fire budget is the diesel costs for our fleet and the cost to repair our fleet and equipment. Due to the nature of fire equipment, it seems to be like weddings. Once you put the word fire in it, the price goes up. Whether that is accurate or not, that does seem to be the nature of it. So those are parts and labor on the repairs are again a challenge for us. Again, through you, Madam Mayor, to the rest of council, is there any questions on the fire department budget?
Councilor Rollerman.
Madam Mayor, my question, I guess, through you to the fire chief. Question we ask every single year, where are we at with the Cambridge contract? And I see it was $306,000 last year, now it's 414,000, so maybe Chief can just give us an update on the status of that contract.
Could I just interject for one moment? The fourth quarterly payment came out in December. So the 2022 amount was $408,000.
So 2022 is 408, and the budget amount is 414.
There was an automatic escalator in the agreement on a per annual basis. And I believe the factor was 1.5% over the prior year. And so that's where the new number for 2023 comes from. It's a 1.5% increase over fiscal year 2022. With respect to the fire service contract, council last year asked myself and the fire chief to look at alternatives in terms of delivery in lieu of the fire services contract. And at that point in time, it was agreed that we would be reporting on in 2022. It is part of the business plan for the fire chief to look at alternative delivery model, both from a capital and operating perspective, as well as potential locations, and I'll call it pros and cons of the various scenarios. And we are still on target to deliver that in calendar year 2023. Current contract with Cambridge expires at the end of fiscal year 2024.
As a follow-up, I wanted to find out what the impact of those new lands on the Queen Shaver have on that servicing that area. If it goes through, the new development of new lands, will we be in a position to have to open up a fire station in that portion of the township?
So the McQueen Shaver lands probably will not be urbanized for at least 7 to 10 year period. And the only reason why I say that is because McQueen Shaver Boulevard in its entirety has not been constructed as of yet. Effectively, it goes only as far as I'll call the Fountain Street extension. And it will continue further east in second, third phase of the construction. And those are dependent on the region and the capital budget on an annual basis. And to open up some of those lands as per what is contemplated in Regional Official Plan Amendment number 6, you have to have access, and that would be via those future extensions to McQueen Shaver Boulevard. What will be more immediate are what we refer to as Westwood Village Phase 2. And we have Planning Act applications in front of council as we speak. We had public meetings in the spring of 2022. Staff do anticipate bringing recommendation reports to council to deal with the secondary plan policies, the 2 draft plans of subdivision, and the implementing zoning bylaw amendment. I would suggest to you, on the premise of a buoyant economy, you're probably 2 to 3 years away from urbanization occurring in the phase 2 lands. The builders are currently actively under construction in phase 1 within city limits. And given the inventory of lots and the uptake on an annual basis, that's sort of where I'm coming up in my 2 to 3 year period from present. At that point in time, there is a formula in the current agreement. Let's just say it happens prior to year end 2024. There is a provision to account for the adjusted households. If there is a renewal extension to the existing contract, then those houses, as they come on stream, would be captured, and we would be growing at a rate higher than the annual indexation of 1.5%, just because there are more homes to be serviced and the premises is a risk with each home constructed.
Absolutely.
Thank you, CEO. So as a follow-up, then I guess the concern I have is, and the treasurer pointed out a bit earlier, that MPAC is not up to date with the assessment. So as new properties come on stream, we're not getting the tax revenue from those properties. But in the meantime, if Cambridge West develops quickly, as you're suggesting, we'd be in a position where we have to provide fire service through our contract, which would increase, but we wouldn't get any offsetting revenue from the assessment because it wouldn't be recognized by MPAC. How would we handle that?
So as with any experience of growth, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the Westwood Village Phase 2, if we're talking about South Air development up at the 97-401 Business Park, we do receive our money. It's just not tied directly to the day of occupancy. In other words, as the person moves in, the tax bill isn't there. There can be that lag, and sometimes between creating the assessment and the notification, it can be, a year to 18 months, depending upon how busy MPAC is with their broader portfolio. So it is retroactive in terms of the funds raised back to the day of occupancy, because they track it based on our building permit history and records. It's just that our cash flow, there can be a bit of a lag. And the reality is, similar to what we're experiencing elsewhere, we would absorb it, and we have this issue right now as it relates to our road maintenance and our park maintenance. We're not fully vested in terms of the offset revenue, but the demand is there because the pressures, because the new lane kilometers of road are there, or the hectares of parkland, whatever the case is.
Thank you, Carrie Atkinson.
Are there any other questions on fire services, or shall I move on? Okay.
Move on, please.
If we look at other protective services, this is our animal control, this is our bylaw, and this is our crossing guards. The two items to note is there is an increase in the animal control costs. We brought to council the revised Humane Society contract that slightly increased our service levels and costs. So that has been reflected in the 2023 budget. And council approved in the summer an additional crossing guard. So both the winter and the fall term is now reflected in the budget as well. Are there any questions on those three departments? Okay. The next department in your book is the Engineering and Public Works Department. I will highlight just a few things of the many things that that department is undertaking in 2023. The gravel road maintenance and the tree planting programs, we were not fully able to utilize all of the funds in 2022 for various reasons. So we have proposed those funds have been transferred to a reserve and will be used to enhance the program for 2023 as a bit of a catch up. And then the other item that beyond fuel and repair costs, of course, the other item to note is that the winter control costs have also increased. This is due to the factor that materials, salt and sand has once again increased significantly. We also have a few additional sidewalk kilometers that we are maintaining. And then the multi-year contract does increase for the new winter season. Are there any questions on the Public Works Department?
Seeing none, carry on.
The next department to review is the Leisure and Community Services. Again, to highlight, fuel and energy costs for our fleet and facilities is of significance. So again, that is one of the biggest cost drivers for the department for 2023. We are also experiencing higher repair costs as we near the end of the useful life of the equipment at the ACC. It's just the nature, there are more repairs near the end, so that is coming in. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is we are proposing in this budget new lines for neighborhood level community events. So there is $500 set aside for the community of Brampton, $500 for Clive, $500 for Roseville, and $500 for Browns. Madam Mayor, through you to the rest of council, are there any questions on the Leisure and Community Services?
Councilor Robinson and Councilor Nolan.
I was just wondering how the events, the new monies are being communicated to these neighborhoods. So this is available to them.
So, Madam Mayor, good Councilor Rowlands, if I may. So if council establishes as a new service level, we will be bringing the February meeting policy as to how we would assess or allocate those funds. Generally speaking, we have on occasion an approach to site by Clive, just as an example, and they've had a July 1st fireworks. And so there were certain things that were undertaken, and in this case, those costs would be drawn from that $500. You know, we tuned in certain equipment, there was, insurance coverages and the like for the best. So that's how we recover. But we'd have to bring a written policy because they don't exist right now. You see, this is where it's a little bit different than in the community over there. So we have neighborhood events, but they're more of a corporate wide or township wide, and so we don't have the policies. These are really meant to bring something into those outlying settlement areas, just recognizing that they don't necessarily travel to there on a consistent basis, and this reinforces their community identity, socialization, bringing people together at a neighborhood level.
I have two questions on the parks section, on page 24 of the budget book. The first one is a sort of clarification on the water and sewer. I'm looking at 2020, it's 105, and then it drops down to 20,000. It's all over the map. I just want some clarification on that number. And the other question I had is about the water at the cenotaph. It's $2,000, and then there's actual users with $1,000, and now we're budgeting 5,000. So I just want to know how we arrived at that number.
Madam Mayor, through you to Councillor Roman. The parks water included the splash pad. And when you go back to the 100,000, that actually was the accumulation of 2 years of billing. There was, it was prior to my arrival, but there was some sort of mix up in terms of how the region was billing us. So they, in fact, missed billing us for a year and then played catch up in that year. And that's where that came from. The director of Leisure and Community Services and I have been watching those bills quite closely this year. Unfortunately, we've had a few hiccups in terms of the meter got turned off. So there were some estimations again from the region. So we believe that we have arrived at the correct number. It also now includes the additional washroom facility at Victoria Park that was opened up. So it does encompass all of those, and that is why the costs are increasing. In terms of the water for the cenotaph, both it and the fountain were again turned off for during the construction of Northumberland. So once again, we didn't have really great historical records to make sure, but this year we have seen increases on it, and then the cost going up. This is to better reflect a full year service.
Any other questions? Yeah.
The next department to highlight is our planning services. What you will see in this department is some pigeoned in revenues that are translating from the regional level down to us due to Bill 23 and the More Homes Built Faster Act. So we have done our best to estimate what we anticipate that to be, but that is very much an estimate as we have never provided those services before. It does also include the brand new position of the manager for planning services and the related costs of computer equipment and things that go with adding an additional position. Are there any questions on planning services? The final budget item I'd like to discuss is the building services. Building services is required to be self-funded, so they are not required to be part of our tax levy. In fact, they cannot be part of our tax levy. So once again, they are anticipating a very busy 2023. I think I can speak for the director to say that 2022 was an astounding year. We have never collected that much building revenues that I can see in the history of this township. So, and they are still anticipating a very banner year next year.
See no questions. I have a quick one regarding building services. I noticed that the reserve fund is quite large. Is there's a level that they can get to or not?
Madam Mayor, there is no specific requirement. Generally speaking, we would look at a 2 or 3 year horizon and what would happen if there was a slowdown in the economy, and we needed to draw upon the reserves. Would we be able to sustain the department based on the cyclical nature of construction? The other aspect is timing of when building permits come in. We had a significant deposit of building permits in November because the development charges rate went up December 1st. The reality is that home construction is now only starting to commence. So while the revenue showed as a 22 receivable paid to us, the actual work of our forces will be in the first 6 months of fiscal year 2023. And so that's why Bill 24 was set up, to allow the migration of monies back and forth in these reserve accounts, to recognize partially the cyclical nature of the building industry, but also the inter-year transfers back and forth, representative of when applications are filed and when actual construction commences and triggering our inspections and the market.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, councilors? Councilor Rowan.
Are we going to discuss bylaw and SAR?
So bylaw was discussed as other, well, I didn't really have anything to highlight for it, part of other protection services, and I didn't have anything to highlight with the SAR either, but I am open to any questions you may have.
My first question is regarding bylaw. Does it make sense at this point in time to go with 2 full-time bylaw officers instead of 1 full-time, 2 part-time? I'm just wondering if the service level would be improved if we had two full-time officers.
We have proposed hiring an additional part-time officer at this point, and the posting was going to go up tomorrow so that we could have different coverage available, because our 1 part-time has taken a different job, so his availability is limited. It is certainly council's discretion. 2 full-time would provide more hours.
I just noticed that we've had problem retaining some of the part-time people. They seem like constantly leaving, whereas the full-time person's been here for a while. So I just think for stability, maybe we should be looking at having 2 full-time. That way we might have a chance of actually staying longer than this constant rotation of part-time bylaws.
And Councilor Tilly.
Proposed as 2 different shifts to cover us static costs.
We turned over a fan in the last, but it has been COVID. And it was ugly. Bylaw was very ugly during COVID. I talked to Justin and it settled down a lot. If we go to 2 full-time, you're looking at vacations and shifts and times off. So if we went 2 full-time, then you wouldn't be able to fill the shifts. Because if one took vacation pay, the other one would have to work the 2 shifts. So actually it makes more sense either to do 2 full-time and 1 part-time, or 1 full-time and 2 part. See all I mean?
Madam Mayor, it would be of assistance to council. If council wishes staff to look at, I'll call it the costing of migrating from part-time to full-time, we can do that. And what the implications would be on a typical week in, week out shift in terms of added coverage. I'm going to use the word more reliability in terms of coverage, only because part-time are working around their full-time job. And so it's not always a consistent 16 hours of coverage from the part-time individual, depending upon personal life, but also their work obligation, their full-time work obligations. But more importantly, we can track it against, I'll call it rate of activity. Okay, both inquiries, calls for service, investigations, and the like. We do track that. And we are a growing community. I can tell you my time here with the township, the activity rate has increased substantially. I don't think that trend's going to go away. But you also don't want to have surplus capacity wrapped up in wages. And it might be a year or 2 premature in that regard. When we crafted the budget, based on our work history, we didn't see the need for the full-time additional staff. But if council's wish, we can, for this January 26th meeting, it will take us a few days to pull together. We could put a discussion paper together and identify to you the appropriateness of making the modifications. Or another scenario may be adding another part-time, and having a slightly larger pool, with the intent that maybe 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road as warranted, one of those, both of them is converted to a full-time. So it's like there may be an interim option, versus immediately going to a second full-time. But if you allow us 2 weeks, we come back on the 26th with a discussion paper that gives you the pros and cons, the order of magnitude of the cost, because it is an operating budget cost, so it has a direct implication on the levy, hence the tax rate. And obviously, whatever we publish to date would go up accordingly. So in that fullness of information, you can make an informed decision. And from that, then tell us which way you wish to proceed.
Councilor, is your agreement of waiting for the report to change 26? I see a lot of head nodding, so so direct you. Your other item,
My other item is on page 20 of the budget book. Session reading. Township provides winter snow plowing, winter control for the entire township in the form of road snow plowing. In the village of Air, there's also sidewalk snow plowing. And I know the mayor agrees with me that basically the township introduced this years ago to avoid potential lawsuits from slip and trip. So basically that was the reason for bringing it in. The argument has been in the past that this only benefits the residents of Air, and that's why the residents of Air pay for it. But I would argue that it actually benefits all the residents of the township because everyone enjoys a lower insurance rate because we provide the service and we're not exposed to liability from slip and trip. So I would like to suggest that the SNR be removed and just blend in the regular levy, not be a special charge for Air, but actually be part of the regular part of the electric tax.
Councilor Timmons.
My understanding, this is something that's been approached previous years, and this is something that is obviously understandably a cost that could be seen as a cost specifically to certain residents. My question would be based on what this cost is and the additional costs to the township. Are we doing the best thing for the whole township to do that? That's where it comes down to. Are we doing what we need to for the whole township to act as a solid township, or are we still identifying? So we can discuss that a bit. That would be where I'm sitting.
Councilor Austin and then Councilor Williams.
Madam Mayor, it shows in our report is approximately $8 or something for the special area rate in Air itself. My question with that has always, my issue with it, I mean, it's always been kind of a wondering why we're doing that. Besides the insurance, it's like most of the sidewalks in that where our special area rate exists, there's a lot of businesses and people go into these businesses and these businesses pay business taxes. And those tax coffers don't, it's not a special area rate tax that we get back. That tax money all goes into the whole township. So I've always questioned why there's a special area rate tax on one certain thing. When the tax money for the businesses for everybody, it's not just for the people in that area that go to the businesses. People come from out of town, go to the businesses, people come to the restaurants, people come to the chiropractor, to the massage therapy, to the dentist, all these, and those tax money go into the pot. So I always wondered why, if all the tax money is going into the pot of the whole township, why we needed that special area rate, because and we never really pushed it to a limit where we got into any kind of heated debate over it, because we're talking the difference of $8. But once you spread that out through the township, you're probably talking $3 or $4. So it's not like we're talking, hundreds of dollars to a family. However, like I said, I always wondered why that tax money goes into the full coffers of the township. Yeah. We pay a special area rate tax and wards 1 and 2 for those services to those businesses.
Council Williams.
Madam Mayor, I think my questions are on online, so if this is a residential service that we're providing, that's what I was understanding, as opposed to for residents.
Sidewalks are all.
So is there, because if it's a residential in most municipalities, the residents, like wherever I've lived, I've always seen the sidewalk. And that's just been the norm, and municipalities dealt with any liability without an issue. I have known that for business areas, there is often services provided by cities, so that's a different, I think that's a different argument to me. But for residents, I would say if this levy is too much for air residents, then maybe we should just remove it for residents. For own side.
Council Gillen.
Just because this is unfortunately not a well-known subject to myself, what I would request is some map, maybe identifying what areas are affected by this. Maybe additional information as to specifically what the options would be for taxes after both options. And as Councilor Williams just mentioned, is there a service that's primarily needed for the businesses that we want to maintain and keep open and allow our visitors to come and enjoy and the people who are actually in their township coming to enjoy it. If we can have something like that, then at least I can have a better understanding. I'm not very comfortable at this point.
CEO McNally.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to Councilor Tilley. So last year, there was quite a lengthy discussion on the air special rate and specifically the proportion of sidewalks, winter maintenance that benefited the community as a whole versus air. And so there was a follow-up report with a map that showed, my numbers around it, approximately 30 kilometers of sidewalk that needed to be serviced. And we differentiated those that served a community-wide basis. In other words, something that access a township facility like the library or through Centennial Park, the downtown area, because of the commercial businesses recognizing that potential is there for anybody to come and walk the sidewalk to access a store. So we prorated it based on the number of kilometers total, and then we subtracted those that served a community-wide destination versus something along a typical residential street in a neighborhood. Generally, it broke into a 70-30 split. And so last year, council directed as part of a budget change, the 30% of the cost of winter maintenance for the sidewalk system would gravitate to the general levy, and 70% would be picked up in the air special rate. So this year's budget draft has been calculated based on the rate charge increase 22 over 23, based on that 70-30 split. So certainly, Madam Mayor, we can take last year's follow-up report, brush it off, update it, because there's been some subtle changes, but some more meters of sidewalk constructed. And, you know, see where we are in relationship to that 70-30. I guess that'd be the first order of magnitude, compare 22 versus 23. And then, yes, we can provide you different scenarios as to, you know, if it was all across the tax levy and not segregated by the air special levy. We can look at other combinations if you wish, but our first thing would be, where are we in relationship to the 70-30? I don't think it's migrated that substantially, but there will be extra meters. As more stuff there has been urbanized. But the more important thing would be then, what does it look like if it was taken off the property tax base? With respect to why the township has this level of service, it is a very high level of service. The township is the only community in all of Waterloo region where there are sidewalk systems, that they're cleaned by the municipality. You can go to other municipal jurisdictions. The municipalities may do portions of the sidewalk system, but no one does it uniformly at the same level. So we, as part of our service contract, we plow all of the sidewalk systems in urban air. We also put down product to deal with slip and trip related to ice or packed snow conditions, so that we get down to a concrete surface. We do it within 8 hours of calling. Okay. So like our road system, our sidewalk has a first rate. It's all tracked. When we call out, when we assign the work to be done, we have GPS indicators showing the route. We do this from a risk management perspective. And, it forms part of our 4-season strategy related to our sidewalks. So in other times of the year, we're looking for effective sidewalk plates that are replaced and things like that. In the winter, we're obviously looking for risk related to weather-related events and safe passage. We do exceed the minimum maintenance standards in that regard. What this does, as a positive for the residents, we don't have to worry about our seniors or individuals that are disabled and the burden that could potentially be placed on them to clean the sidewalk across their property frontage. Most of our sidewalks are only on one side of the road. Yet the residents, plural, whether they're on the east side, or the north, or the west side of the road, everyone benefits from the sidewalk. And so everyone's paying for it rather than the individual that actually has the onus of having to clear it. We know it's uniformly cleared, and we know it's cleared to a certain standard. Because at the end of the day, if we assign it to a resident, we're the ones that are still liable. It becomes our infrastructure. And it saves us the aggravation of having to have bylaw go out, issue notices, it potentially issue fines and the like. We know when the storm starts, call out occurs, we know approximately 8 hours later, the sidewalk is clean, the network is clean, and it's consistent. And we're not having to constantly do that follow-up. And or looking at specialized service, if we're looking for those individuals like potentially seniors, those with disabilities. And in some cases, you've got people away on holidays or whatever, and it can be difficult and problematic. I live in a neighborhood where you as a resident clear the sidewalk, and I can tell you, walking a dog, 2 or 3 days after this storm event can be a hazard because it's never been cleaned across certain properties, and now it's packed down. It could have been a freeze-thaw cycle, and now it's sheet of ice. And we are getting people out walking, both from a health perspective, but also being able to get to community destinations, shopping, or whatever the case is, with the comfort that they can get there safely. So there's a series of benefits, but certainly I think the township initially did do it from a risk management perspective. The insurance cooperative appeared before the last term of council as part of orientation, and they talked about our winter maintenance program and how it does, from a risk perspective, favor the township versus some of our comparables elsewhere. And we do have the insurance cooperative coming for another training session with the new term of council. I apologize, I can't remember whether they're coming in February or March, but I'm sure they'll be stressing some of the risk management components that the township has deployed with the overall intent of lowering risk.
Councilor Roman.
Madam Mayor, further to the CEO's comments, buried in that is discussion of the gold standard that you mentioned. Part of that is the rural roads are plowed as well within the 8-hour time period we talked about, right? So when we look at our adjoining municipalities, such as, the Kitchener, for example, we drive down the Kitchener, North Dunphy roads are beautifully plowed. You get to Kitchener, they're not plowed for 2 or 3 days. If we're going to discuss removing sidewalks, snow plowing for the residents of Air, then we should also open up a discussion about what is to be the service standard for the rural roads. Do we need to be plowing a road that's one house on it within 8 hours, or do we want to push that back 2 or 3 days? That's all part of the same discussion. So all I'm suggesting is that we're gonna offer a gold standard. It's not a gold standard that their residents have asked for. I think it's a gold standard that we have across the entire township. Then we should look at every single aspect of it, including the rural roads and what that standard is, because quite honestly, the other towns around us are not doing that. They're not plowing the roads within 8 hours. They take 2 or 3 days to get some of those roads cleared. So 2 weeks of time. I'm proud of our standard. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. I don't want to see it change, but if we're gonna have a discussion, then let's put everything on the table. That's all I'm saying.
Councilor Williams.
So I still think that roads are a little bit different than sidewalks, but maybe that's also my rural perspective, right? Coming through, like, nobody plows my laneway except us. We have as neighbors, we just have an agreement. Everybody does their own little stretch and everybody gets through within a certain time. And it's not that hard. And whenever I was living in other places, when we did our sidewalks, everybody did their share. If you knew the neighbor was gone to Florida, just how much care of it. It's hard being a neighborhood. Of course, there's people who won't. And then there's people who are seniors who would need to hire contractors or have to, I don't know, kid down the street. That's also, it's not, it's a gold standard, but it's not a standard across the area. I think roads are a different story just because they're not just service, like, but maybe, I don't know, I just see that as quite a different thing, just because I'm a car person and I think most of the rural area is more car oriented. Rather than walking dogs. Sidewalks.
Councilor Williams.
Just respond, I mean, I grew up on a farm and worked in Glen Township. In the 70s, we had some pretty good snowstorms and we were snowed in for weeks, and that was the way it was on the farm, so we understood that, and we went into the cities or the towns, they were plowed, and we weren't, so I mean, that's the old standard. I mean, things have changed a lot since then, must have to go back to that, that's how it used to be.
Councilor Tilly.
In the proposal or the concept that we're gonna be reassessing, and sorry, I'll just review and see what we're doing. When I'll just wait for the responses, but when we get this, I assume would be in the same 2-week time period to assess this. I would assume that we could understand, and again, it's to the benefit of the whole township. If we are coming to, if it happens in November that we're coming to air and set a tap, it is one for that happens to be one of those things, then having everything cleared off and having it as a presentable downtown is something that I can understand. And the cost of doing this for the big picture of what we're actually getting out is also something I'd like to see. The response time sounds like the level of our fire department. It's way higher than probably we never expected to be, and that's fantastic. But I'm sure that comes at a cost. It comes at a premium. And so that's in my mind when I hear you speaking, I'm hearing like premium service. This is something, a premium service that we're getting in here, and that's a good thing. And that what and what cost and what. So we can reassess that and we can understand that once I understand better. I'm totally open to conversation whether or not it is something that would benefit the whole township or not.
If I may, Chris is statement. Okay. CEO McNeely, I thought Wilmot did do sidewalks.
No, they do portions of their sidewalk system, not the entire network.
Okay, thank you. And also in your report, do we already in that 30% take the downtown out?
Correct. The downtown, and through our parks, from our community facilities like the ACC, the library, they've all been subtracted out. They form a portion of that 30% based on last year's calculation of the overall network. So, Madam Mayor, if it's council's wish, we can update the analysis that was done last year. So there'll be a map that will sort of identify the entire network, and then I'll say segregate between what we interpret as community level versus neighborhood, and recalculate that ratio of 70-30, and see if that's shifted in a meaningful fashion year over year. But the third component to that will be, then we can tell you what the implications are if you were to collapse near special levy. And it was spread across the overall property tax bill.
So if I may now, council. I'm sitting on GRAC. And GRAC is made up of disabled people. And they've been fighting for years to get the sidewalks done in Kitchener. And they worked out a cost that would cost $28 per month per house. People pay more than that now. This service at $8 a year. I mean, use my language, but we're getting a hell of a lot for $8 a year. And to take it away, some people would be devastated. And on top of that, we're gonna have to reevaluate this every year because Roseville was supposed to get a sidewalk. And I sent an email this week because that sidewalk should have been put in a year and a half ago. So I talked to the region, where's the Roseville sidewalk? Clyde may want a sidewalk someday just to keep the people away from the speeding traffic going down Clyde Road. So it may become something encompassed upon Old Township. But with the growth that we're gonna have, what is this gonna cost us? And at that point, do we look at taking it away? I'm gonna recommend we leave things as it is right now. Sorry, councils, I really want to get rid of the area rate, but for $8 a year, I'd love the sidewalks, but, and I don't have a sidewalk in front of my house. And it's not $8, is it, Christine? Because I saw your hand up. Go ahead, Christine.
Just to clarify, Madam Mayor, $8.45 is the increase over the prior year. It's actually, for 2023, it's projected at $48 for the entire year.
Per house.
For the average household, it's $48 for the entire year.
Now, I don't have a sidewalk, but I'll pay the $48 so I can cross the road and have my pension and walk on the sidewalk. And you know, you talk about disabled and elderly, but mothers with strollers, kids walking to and from school. This is a great service we provide for our community, and it only costs $48 per household. I think we should go for it, and I think we should be thankful for it. Because if we grow and expand the way the province wants it, we may not be able to. It may be just way too costly. But for now, I would like to see it the way it is. Just my thoughts, Councilwoman.
So just follow up, what would happen with Roseville and Clyde if they got sidewalks? We have to do an SAR for them as well then? We have little SARs all over the township.
CEO McNally, we discussed that last term, so please.
I'm going from memory. We did talk about both Wrigley as well as Roseville, because the region initially has identified the construction of sidewalk systems in both of those rural settlement areas. And they were within the next 7 to 10 year time period. The discussion was, because we're obligated to maintain sidewalks, whether they're on a regional road or a local road, we would have to amend our current contract with our service provider and add those additional routes to the program. So then the question became, how do we recover? And one of the scenarios would be there would be potentially a tiered rate exclusive to each of those settlements, similar to what is presently in place for air. Council may look at the overall sum of the sidewalks and how they're now being proportioned and collapse the levy. I mean, there's different permutations and combinations. The question has never been answered because the sidewalks outside of air have never materialized, but they are on the horizon. And I would suggest to you that Roseville will probably be the first of the rural settlements. And as we speak, you know, that project, I believe, is now 2 to 3 years in the forward period. We'll have to see what happens with the regional budget, but it's imminent. I mean, they've already started engineering design on that. It just hasn't received the allocation of funds as part of the budget process to construct, but it's on the immediate horizon. What we haven't talked about is whether we're extending that sidewalk system onto the adjacent residential streets. The region has the build as part of improvements to Fisher Hall and Roseville.
So I see no more further comments. We will wait for the information from Christina. Thank you, Christina. Carry on. Anything else, Councilwoman? Carry on, Christina, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That really concludes my presentation for the operating budget. It is at this point, if there is anything we have not spoken about that council wishes to discuss, or any other questions on the operating budget.
Councilor Bowman.
Madam Mayor, further, I raised the issue of the car charging, would that be at this point, or is that going to be at the capital?
So, Madam Mayor, that initially would be a capital project because it's physical construction. Once operational, there potentially could be an annual operating cost. But there's a discussion paper that's been crafted and will be issued Thursday night, assuming that we're going to be talking about the 23 capital. And the discussion on order of magnitude of the time to build processes, availability of grants, it's all discussed in the discussion paper. But it actually has an operating component going forward if activated.
Seeing no other questions, so now I'll ask the motion. Is that correct? Oh, Councilor Turner.
Sorry, I just was reading my Stephen McNeely. Currently, the porta potties would be an operational.
Correct. Want to discuss that now?
Sure, we're in the operating budget realm right now. Shared with you as an addendum this morning, discussion paper number 1 that speaks to the porta potties. This came about in part with conversations with Councillor Tilley and his information asking about what would it require, what's the potential cost if on a seasonal basis, generally speaking, May through September. What would the cost be if we were to introduce porta potty facilities at Clyde and Branchton? So discussion paper number 1 was prepared to speak to this issue. Because first of all, at present, there is no budget line for the introduction of porta potty facilities in one or more parks in the 2023 draft. So any cost would be a new budget. So in my discussions with Councillor Tilley, I tried to wrap my head about service levels. Is there a consistency then that we should be looking at in terms of availability of affordable washroom facility for a seasonal basis? Because other parks beyond Clyde and Branch serve, generally speaking, the same kind of purpose and intent. So Browns, Roseville, Piper's Glen, they're all neighborhood scale type facilities, and the same kind of dynamics could occur. And if a washroom facility is required in one neighborhood park, is it something that council wishes to look at uniformly within the same classification of park facilities? So the report speaks to our current service level. We have only platooned in portable facilities, typically tied to a special event, which is generally known and short in duration. So I'll use an example. Fireworks at Clyde, we would platoon in the porta potty a day or two in advance. It would be there for the event, and then it would be removed within a day or so after that event. So the question is, if we're going to assess the need for or the appropriateness of portable facilities on a seasonal basis, we need to understand order of magnitude cost, and then whether or not it's appropriate to be extended to other similar type park facilities. So we know if we're looking at the May to mid-September time period, there's a cost for the season. There is the entrance and exit of the portable facility, and then there's HST. So the cost per portable per site is $795. That includes the net HST. So we then talked about the different types of park facilities, generally the target audience and the level of service that we currently provide. So our first is community level parks. And generally speaking, this is comprised of Cowan, Schmidt, Victoria, and Centennial. Each of those parks has a community-wide lens. Generally speaking, it's higher order recreational or sports facilities, and we're drawing people from across the township to that destination. Generally speaking, longer term time period per visit. And there's the potential for people out of town coming to those facilities to participate or view whatever the event may be. The Cowan, Schmidt, and Victoria, we have bricks and mortar buildings where we have water and sewer services and then fully accessible washroom facilities designed to serve the patrons at each of those addresses. Centennial Park, albeit not recreational in nature, is an open space within the downtown. We do run cultural and performance events there, once again, serving a broader focus in terms of attendance. It does not have a washroom facility. Now, there we do have an implication associated with the floodplain and where we could potentially put a bricks and mortar building, if possible. There may or may not be issues with gravity fall for sanitary sewer, depending upon where that could be built if we're outside the flood. There are constraints with Centennial because of high groundwater table, but also the influence of the floodplain. But like the other three parks, it is at a community level facility. The neighborhood parks, generally speaking, these are 3 to 5 acres or 1.2 to 2 hectares in size. They're designed to serve the immediate neighborhood around the park. They're a place for socialization. Generally speaking, we have play structures and swings. There's unorganized play areas. There's sitting areas. There may or may not be other recreational type amenities like a basketball court or something similar. They vary a little bit from site to site, but generally speaking, all of them have this larger unorganized play area, swings, play structures, and sitting areas. The service area for a neighborhood park is 500 to 800 meters, or generally speaking, a 5 to 8 minute walk. So the premise is you're truly serving the people in that immediate area as part of their open space needs and demands, regardless of age or ability. By contrast, a neighborhood park would be Browns, Clyde, Branchton, Roseville, and Piper's Glen. So there'd be 5 existing facilities that would fall within that area. Part of your 2023 capital budget, if council approves the 23 capital, we'll be adding another neighborhood park in South Air. It's the one that straddles the Bruce Legacy subdivision. So this list, 1 year removed, it would be looking at a 6th facility. A parquet, generally smaller in size, ½ acre to 1 acre in size, 0.2 to 0.4 hectares. We will have play structures and swings, generally smaller in size than you would have at a neighborhood park. And it's generally swings, play structure, and a sitting area. The service area for a parquet is 500 meters or a 5 minute walk. So still serving the immediate neighborhood, but its footprint is smaller in terms of the area it's trying to capture and serve. And at present, we have 2 parquets, both in urban air, at Hilltop and Douglas. And once again, if council approves the 2023 capital budget, we'd be adding a 3rd parquet in the Freer Challenger neighborhood. And if we look at 2024, construction window will be all of this season. So implications on the 2023 budget, remembering that we have not allocated any dollars for portable facilities regardless of the address. If we were to look at extending it to all 5 neighborhood parks as we know it today, so that would be Branchton, Clyde, Roseville, Browns, and Piper's Glen. We would be looking at approximately $4,045 for the season, May to September. That includes the net HST. If we were to include Centennial, remember today there is no facility. In addition to the 5 neighborhood parks I just spoke to, then the cost would rise to $5,610, which also includes the calculation of the net HST. So staff is looking for direction from council. Do we wish to have portable facilities? If yes, where? And is this a new service level? Because then it's a new service level, we would account for it in annual budgets going forward. And as our roster of parks at a neighborhood level, if that's what council wishes to go, increases, then we would account for those portables as in future parks as they're added to the inventory.
Council Williams.
Just a question to some background perhaps on this request.
Council Chin.
So both requests, both locations, Browns and Branchton, were the original location request. And it was due to the fact that there's multiple times, I'll go speak, Clyde, said Browns, said Clyde. I caught the word and I said the wrong word. Clyde has about the same facility except for the new exercise equipment installed, and the people that live across the road were the ones that made the request. And it's because people that are attending the park will several times a year come across and ask you for that because of the issues with kids and other needs, as I've been explained to same household as the dog park. And one of the things that I can appreciate is the fact that just because the park is supposed to be within a certain walking distance, there's a sense of urgency. So you have a couple options here in the park. You deal with it in a proper manner and sneakily, hopefully get home and deal with it that way, or you end up having to deal with it in a not so polite way, or you have the neighbor next door, right? That's what's happened, and that's what is happening. So from their point of view, it's the question was, is this possible to provide in order to allow people who are enjoying the park to have a facility that is part of the joy? Most people won't go there. There's a lot of people that do go there for the dog walk, let the dog off, and or even though it's not a dog park, I do understand it's being used, both parks are being used as a dog park. That they let the dogs off and basically within 5-10 minutes, they're gone. But then there's the younger families that are there, or a lot of times it's the especially in branches, so I'll apply over the branch at this point. The grandparent can bring the kids down on their wagons, they'll go down and they're there, and there's a nice tree-lined area that can be probably used a lot. And that is the reason, as well as we are, we're also, so I live literally at the top of the hill looking down the park. It's, and I include myself in this, is we're very open for a lot of people walking through branches. So people will, and I've run into people from Ward 3 that I know well, and ask why they're walking through the 80-year visit. So we just come to Branch to walk the streets. It's not far for them. It's a safe walking location, and it's well taken care of. So that is another reason why that people are trying to understand that it's possible to add this to our parks, because it's not something. Now, to contradict a statement that has been written, only because of my experience in my living in Branch for almost my entire lifetime, there was porta potties there. I can't say exactly when, but they were there in the summer. They show up in the spring, and then they just fall. And talking to Councilor Hausner, it did happen, and there's issues with vandalism, and there's issues with other things that made it that they had for what they were being dealt with. And I can totally appreciate that. That is an understandable reason to remove something if it's costing too much and it's not being used in a proper manner. I would contend that the people that are interested in, especially for the two parks that I'm bringing up and mentioning, I don't think it's unreasonable to request all parks would have equal opportunity. But that wasn't what was requested to present to council on behalf of the board of people that I've spoken to. I think it's reasonable to ask that, but if it wasn't a functional, it wasn't that, then I still maintain that the two parks that have asked me to, or the residents of the two parks that have asked me to ask for the facilities for those two parks, I still want to try and see if we can make that work. The part of the reason why I can understand that whole reason to remove the bathroom is I live right down the park, and I'm sure there are times, and from my understanding, Clyde, there's a lot of people that come in at night into Clyde Park and just hang out in that parking lot. And I'm gotta assume that there's been calls to bylaw to deal with that, to get those, just prior to my understanding, and I'm pretty sure I know who did that. So I understand that there's been some problems. Looking to see if there's a possible to resolve that or to come up with an option.
See, I only have a couple of questions. Do we have to do it from May to September? Could we do June to September? May's awfully wet.
Like I answered. Okay. So I requested on behalf was mid-May, mid-September, because that's generally when the park starts getting, April is wet, especially in the parks, but by mid-May, it's pretty dry up. But
Would council be willing to indulge this for our pilot project for the two parks for this year? And we could use the money that we are not using for TAPMO to cover the costs. Council Roman.
I understand what the council utility is suggesting. The biggest problem we have with Clyde the last 80 years has been all the vandalism. So I know we'll have a flaming porta potty pretty quick out there. The only thing I would suggest when they're putting out there is we should close that parking lot, because people who live nearby can walk there. People who are coming in cause vandalism are taking their little race cars, parking in the parking lot and causing no problems. If we close the parking lot up with some Jersey barriers and then just have a porta potty in there, that would serve the local people, but it wouldn't entice the people from Cambridge coming out and cause no problems.
Council Tilly.
my intent is to have a town hall meeting with the people of Clyde, because I haven't done that introduction yet, and I think that would be a great option to present, because I'm sure they're sick and tired of just having people go in there and but I wouldn't want to speak further without having that conversation ahead of time and getting an option. But I think that's something that would be a great option instead of saying. So I appreciate that.
Seal McNeely, that's come up before. What is the discussion in regards to closing the pilot?
So Madam Mayor, my tenure may be wrong in terms of timing, but 3 or 4 years ago, through the seasonal time when the park is generally active, we did try we've got concrete barriers there now. And because the park is effectively closed other than walking. Because we're not maintaining the sidewalk, the parking lot. That's why it's not open. We don't plow it. So we tried that in the summer, 3 or 4 years ago, and we had mixed success. We had then people driving through the boulevard, between trees, into the parking lot. We had people with heavy 3/4 ton trucks taking chains and pulling the concrete blocks. We had some residents concerned because they like to drive to the park even though they lived in Clyde. And there was little available parking, and they didn't like parking on the shoulder because of the speed of traffic on Village. It's a bit of a straightaway, and they didn't feel safe getting in and out of the cars when they had to park on the boulevard, because there was only 2, maybe 3 car park spaces available in the apron where we positioned the concrete barrier before you actually got into the slope going into the parking area. So we've tried a few things. We've had police out and doing SEPPED. We changed the lighting in and around the parking lot and the pavilion. We've got our bylaw started doing more regular patrols when the park is open. We sort of got a pattern of when people were congregating and visibility. Was a deterrent, I'm not saying perfect, but it was a deterrent. Generally speaking, we've had better success over the last 2 or 3 years, but I will attribute that to an increased presence of my law enforcement staff rather than anything we did in the park. The reality is, the more the community uses the park and takes ownership of the park and has a presence in the park, it will discourage some of the people that are at the edges of our community utilizing it, because there's a comfort level. They don't feel comfortable being around the community. So, this is where hopefully either through future facilities incorporated into the park or increased programming opportunities or just a socialization place for the neighborhood. The more activity and ownership by the community and use, it will assist us tremendously in some of these petty vandalism issues that we've experienced in the past, or the racing of cars in the parking lot.
See, McNally, another thing I wanted to ask is, if a porta potty is damaged, do we have to pay for it?
So, Madam Mayor, we have had portable facilities damaged in the past when we threw them in. We have not been charged for those damages. However, when it becomes a repeat event, they basically tell us they're removing their facility and we lose them.
So I'm still going to suggest to this council that we allow for the 2 parks to have it for a test solution, using the funds from, that we did not tap. Councilor Stilly.
Madam Mayor, my, other than having a small interaction now with one person, where this is on, I can attest that Branch, at least at this point. But speaking to the people that do directly across, they have great interest in being part of what CAO said was being part of. We've been having some, so a neighborhood watch would be something that I would like to see if we can start instituting in a neighborhood where people are interested in taking care of it. It's something that it doesn't take much to see somebody, and I don't know how much faster the response would be when somebody's watched, but just watching and doing nothing is not the same as watching and actually going over and putting a flashlight on something and saying, "Hey guys, you want to be here." That's an option. I'm not saying that they need to do that, but that's what I do in my neighborhood. If I don't see a car that I don't recognize and been there or is down to something, I go up and I talk to them. I don't ask them to leave. I don't ask them to do anything. That's what I do. And then that's my part of my contribution to the neighborhood. And I know other people do the same, but we also have high radiation. So we need that we have to do that, or we're just allowing people to come in and do what they want to our neighborhood. So I would say ownership is a huge thing. And if we could do something to keep that down, and I appreciate it. And the reason why I'm speaking to this is I will take the responsibility to try and improve or create an atmosphere where that can happen by having a better relationship and seeing if we can do something like I'm sure people might want that. So my understanding is it's not people that live in Clyde that do it. It's actually from Cambridge and surrounding areas that come from their neighbors. Cambridge, but
And I'm not leaving out your word, I was just saying you have had no request yet. So if you ever did have a request, we see how this goes. Because you can cancel those.
Yeah, I concur. I like the idea of a pilot. I'm just wondering, what would we say? Yeah, this was really successful. Then how would we determine that this was really successful? Let's do it to like all the other parks.
Or we can reach out to your constituents and find out first if they are wanted to. You live in grounds.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to find out.
Right, but like, let's say, Clyde, but if the porta potties are removed, then the pilot is not perhaps considered a valid pilot, in which case grounds that they want one next year might say, well, no, okay. So this is why I'm wondering, is there a criteria that we need to consider here? If we decide that this is a pilot.
I see Clyde is different, and because it is that Cambridge, it's quite close. The people that caused the issues, I think, grew up a bit over those 3 years, Andrew. But I think Branchton will probably be a non-issue because it is so enclosed. I think Browns will probably be a non-issue because it is so enclosed. Clyde's gonna be the one to watch because we've had problems in the past, but it's been much better. I wouldn't mind doing a test pilot project and I wouldn't mind hearing back from you. And if Clyde fails, I don't think Branchton will. It wouldn't change us possibly doing it for yours. So, any other comment, Councilor Rowland?
Another question is, with regards to Roseville, are there not facilities already in the Roseville News Center?
Message.
That's not the.
So, Madam Mayor, to Councilor Roman, Madam Mayor is correct. The building isn't occupied. In other words, someone has permitted it to use the space. The doors are locked. The washrooms are not available from an exterior door. And where they're positioned in the approximate center of the building, it's not as if we can put a two-way door. In other words, one off the hallway in the hall and one access exterior. Its location is not conducive to that. So, there's limited hours when the building is open. Usually it's for a permitted use. And so therefore effectively, the washrooms are for the tenant in the building.
But I think we look at this as a request basis. And so if we do get requests, then I'm asking council if they would consider allowing for a pilot project for the two, one in Clyde, one in Branchton. And that be a 1 year pilot project and we'll see from there, we evaluate the year. We'll take the funds from what we didn't use for time.
So it won't offset, the costs will far exceed $1,500 that were in the budget for TAPO. But what we'll be doing is we're taking, every time council talks about where they wish to change, add or delete, we've got a running list. And the treasurer will run the scan line in terms of what it means in terms of the tax rate, what the change year over year is per household. And then we'll be asking council for a vote by resolution on the various items. Okay, so we're doing a running list, and at the end, we'll be asking council to wave their hand for each addition or deletion to the budget. That way we know with confidence what we're putting in or out of the budget as a draft document.
Councilor Roman, yes.
Just curious, maybe the CEO can refresh my memory. What was the cost per portable facility per quarter?
So with the net HST for the May to September period, it's $795 per washroom per site per season.
Almost.
That'll be worthwhile.
Then you have to use a porta potty. Oh, we're going to toilet fast, anyways. So, can we have a motion, please? Or do we need a motion?
Not right now. So we put it on our list as a potential addition to the 2023 operating.
Thank you. Okay, so, we are still on 6.1 and we have the motion. Is there anything further to discuss on 6.1? If not, then Councilor Rooms will read the motion. You do not have to read it in its entirety. You can say as presented. Unless you want to, you can read it in its entirety if you want to.
So I'm sorry, can I just take a quick look at 6.1 just to make sure? Okay, so Madam Mayor, because we haven't talked about the 2023 capital, items 3 and 4 in that resolution as framed speak to capital items. So I guess what I would be asking,
So we move on
well, we got two things. I don't know how much longer council wants to go. We've gone through the entire operating budget. There's a few things that staff have to come back to council to seek further direction with follow-up reports, which will occur on the 26th. So council has a couple of options in front of you. You could amend the draft budget from an editorial perspective, which captures some of the missions that we identified in the report that were not in the December draft that are now relevant. So example, we've changed the transfer for the air reserve from 700 to 750. Has no effect on the budget because it's in and out. We have identified to you that because of new accounting standards that the federal government has adopted, our auditor has advised us there's an additional cost of $4,500 this year. It was not accounted for in the draft released in December. There is the donation that the fire department has received in the amount of roughly $14,800. It's zeroed out because the grant, so donation matches that expense. We need to show it in our budget because the auditor wants to see the money come in and the money go out and for what purposes. And then the other was a housekeeping item related to the Schmidt Park improvements. The draft in December did not capture the revised project award that council adopted by resolution in August 8th, 2022. So those are, as I said, housekeeping amendments you may wish to consider right now, but you have a choice. If you want to talk about some of the one-offs, like the porta potties, you can add that to this resolution. Generally, the reduction of not having TAPMO, if you were to say you do not wish a membership in 2023, it's almost an offset. But if you want to actually see what the influences are on the tax rate as you add or delete, it's going to take us a few minutes to do that. So we're sort of in the hands of council as to how you want to do things.
Okay, does everybody have a copy of the motion? Okay, so, number one is in the opinion report. And then the, number two has A, B, C, D, and A is $750. So that's just accepting that. The 4,500 for the. The training for the fire department, including $14,809.50 for the purchase of training parts, included 2 sets of the items are listed there. I think we touched base on that a bit.
Yes.
The next one is the capital project Schmidt Park. The amount of $1,044,000 funded by the grant money there, plus the park trust and balance to become from energy plus reserve. The park at construction and gear development.
So that's now getting into a 2023 capital, which we have not discussed yet.
Right. So how do we want to do this? I'm at council's discussion. What would you advise?
So there's other things that we've talked about as it relates to the operating. TAPMO membership. You wish to call that to a vote, you would add it to this restructured.
Item number 5.
Okay, so we would move that up. We would take the 2023 capital projects that are in 3 and 4 out. We would move number 5 being the TAPMO membership up into become new resolution 3. Then there would be the cost of the 2 porta potties for installation for the May to September time period at Branchton and Clyde at an approximate cost of, I apologize, I've lost my sheet.
So actually,
That's $795 times 2. And that's where we've been, because everything else I have to come back with a follow-up report to council on January 26th. So you're not approving the 2023 budget. You are giving direction as to some housekeeping items.
Right.
And your early thoughts on adding or deleting items like the TAPMO membership and the porta potties.
Madam Mayor, if I may, while
Yes.
clerk is updating that Schmidt Park one was an accident on my part. I had only put the original project, but if you remember, council in August actually approved the entire project and the additional spend. So this is just updating to reflect the total cost of the project, which I had accidentally not included in the 2023 capital.
So, Madam Mayor, as it relates to the balance of the evening, just wait for the stage to finish crafting the modified resolution. We're at approximately 8 o'clock. We're scheduled to come back again on Thursday. I guess the question that I have of council, after we deal with this resolution, dealing with the operating, save and accept bylaw enforcement and the special area levy sidewalks, which is coming back with further information at the end of the month. Council wish to wrap up tonight and then come back fresh on Thursday night to deal with the 2023 capital? Or do you want to just keep going on tonight and deal with 2023 capital? And then at the end of the evening, you can decide whether or not you want a meeting on Thursday.
And that's your discretion, council.
I have a close, but I'm sorry, I'm talking more about the budget deliberation.
Budget issue right now, we could push it through for another possible hour and deal with the capital or whatever it takes. And there's closed after that. You're not on, and you close. Feelings, council.
So if we've only got roughly half an hour, I think we're better to deal with the resolution that we've just been crafting. And then wrap up that portion of the meeting. Adjourn to go in closed session to deal with the labor relations item. And council may or may not be reporting out tonight, coming out of closed session. And then we will pick up fresh on Thursday night and just deal with the 2023 capital budget. Given the magnitude of the spend, it warrants the time to go through the capital budget.
Yes. All right, so, again, do you want to go through its entirety, council? Yes, you just do this resolution. Yes.
All right, moved by Councillor Will, seconded by Councillor Oscar, that in report number 01-2023 be received with the amendments listed to A, B, C, and D. And that for number 3, the TAPMO withdraw from TAPMO for 2023, no membership fees fund directed for 2023. And then for 4, the council directs staff to provide porta potty facilities as a 1-year pilot program to be included in the 2023 operating budget from May 15 to September 15 at the cost of $795 per washer per site season, plus HST to be included in Fallen Park, Bridgeton Park, and Clyde.
All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. 6.2, just states the 10-year capital forecast will be discussed at a special council meeting scheduled on January 26th.
So, Madam Mayor, if I could just briefly, the reason why it's in part of tonight's agenda, because we wanted to give everyone, including the public, an opportunity to see the document well in advance of when it'll be presented and discussed, which is scheduled for the 26th.
Thank you. And next we have 6.3, report number PW-01-2023, Piper Street Sidewalk Extension, 2023 capital budget, Piper Street neighborhood meeting, as it added as an addendum.
So Madam Mayor, this would now move to the the Thursday night agenda because of the 2023 spend. And whether or not council wishes to reallocate funds that are presently shown in the 2023 capital. So it'll show up in Thursday's agenda.
That's fine. Just to make sure everybody online is listening, because I know a number of people were planning to listen to this tonight, because it was posted as meeting tonight. So, that it will be on Thursday night. So that. Porta potty, 6.4. And we already included that in, so that's one's done. And motion closed session. And the motion is from.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Williams, I close the closed meeting session of council. Oh, I got it.
Yes.
Got the goodbye, yeah, but no.
Moved by myself, seconded by Council Osmer, that council move into a closed meeting session at 8:07 p.m. And then Municipal Act Section 239, D to discuss report number CAO-01-2023, labor relations or employee negotiations.
All those in favor? Carrie, thank you.
Yeah, so when we
Thank you, and there will be something coming out of close, resolution, Councilor Rowland, please.
Madam Mayor, moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Tilly, that the approved complement of part-time volunteer firefighters be increased by two personnel effective January 2023 on a temporary basis until such time as through attrition, fire department returns to its traditionally approved complement of 35 personnel. And that the treasurer, director of corporate services is directed to amend draft 2023 operating budget for the fire department for wages benefits by a total of $8,055
All those in favor? Carrie, thank you. And confirmatory bylaw, please, Councilor Chili.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Roman, that bylaw number 3378-23 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on January 17, 2023, be read first, second, third time, and finally be passed, signed, and sealed by mayor and clerk.
All those in favor? That's carried. And the adjournment, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Osner, that whereas business before this special budget council meeting has been concluded at 8:26 p.m. and be it resolved that this meeting adjourns and meets again on Thursday, January 19th at 6 o'clock p.m. for a special budget council meeting.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Wow, what did you do? Very funny.